Fuck it. I will just post it myself. I really did not want to write this. However, after careful discussion with colleagues, I am going to go with what my guts tell me I should do. I cannot sit on the sidelines while I observe the UAP field/narrative get filled with half-truths and obfuscations. In this post, I will be providing evidence of documents that cannot be FOIA'd. I will even give my perspective on anti-gravity and the overall landscape of the current UAP field when it comes to intelligence agents that are masquerading as truthers. What I speak on is based on my own experiences and observations from being in the field for almost 4 decades. I have a degree in electrical engineering from a college somewhere in the south of the USA. I will not say the name of the school because it will be very easy for people inside DoD to track me down if I give away too much, considering not many were recruited from the college that I graduated from. I was recruited shortly out of college to work in black operations, specifically on the electrical engineering, microelectronics, and pulsed power side. These black programs do not necessarily care about your academic credentials as much as they care about 2 things in particular. Can you think outside the box? And can you shut the fuck up about it? I do not know everything, but the things I am sure of, I will write about here. Why am I doing this now? Because I was given 8 months to live, and I will do what I can while alive to try and make a positive impact in the community. I sometimes cannot sleep seeing some of the blatant lies fed to the community. Let me put this bluntly, before we even get into anti-gravity systems and the suppressed tech. Jay Stratton and Lou Elizondo are 2 of the main reasons why devices based on zero-point energy. We're talking about systems that theoretically tap into the quantum fluctuations of empty space to pull out limitless energy have never made it to the public eye. They have spent decades actively sabotaging the lives of engineers and physicists who got too close. I am talking ruined careers, wrecked families, nervous breakdowns. This is not speculation, it is personal. Lou wasn't just some guy who just got interested in UFOs after working at the Pentagon. That is PR spin. He was deep in the game, embedded in multiple WUSAPs. That stands for Waived Unacknowledged Special Access Programs. These are black projects so compartmentalized that they don't even show up in regular top secret clearance channels. They get waived from oversight and are officially denied to even exist. Lou ran counterintelligence for them. His role was to keep things under wraps, and that included burying real technology breakthroughs when needed. Now, I don't think Lou is fundamentally evil. It is more complicated. He has done good things in this space, things most people will never know about, but it is also undeniable that he is compromised. He puts US national security above human progress, even when that means feeding the machine that's kept all of us in the dark for generations. The Department of Defense is full of war-hungry parasites who want to hoard this tech to keep the military-industrial complex fed. Lou might think he's just serving his country, but at this point, the damage outweighs the justification, and no matter how well-meaning he is part of the problem. Jay Stratton though, different story. That guy is trash. He has done unspeakable things to some of the people I know and work with. No redemption arc there. I don't even want to get started on the kind of backstabbing and manipulation he's pulled behind the scenes. Sean Kirkpatrick, just a pawn, a bureaucratic mouthpiece. He lies with the same polished ease as Ron Pandolfi, another intel veteran whose entire job is to muddy the waters and derail any disclosure effort. And, for the love of God, don't ask me about Jack Sarfatti. In the circles that matter, he is seen as comic relief. Nobody takes him seriously, even if he thinks he is in the loop. Here is a number for you. There are over 2,000 legacy programs operating right now that are focused on reverse engineering UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena, which is the sanitized term for what we used to just call UFOs. Hal Puthoff recently said on Joe Rogan that we've recovered more than 10 craft. That is a safe, vague statement. The truth? We have got hundreds. That is not speculation, that is conservative. As for Jeremy Corbell, he is a useful idiot. Some of what he puts out is accurate, I will give him that. But when he says stuff like, humans can't replicate or even understand the propulsion systems these craft use, he is parroting nonsense. That is either misinformation or he is just clueless. I don't think he's lying on purpose, I just don't think he knows any better. People like David Grush, Jake Barber, and Mike Herrera, they are the real deal. I have got nothing but respect for them and what they are trying to bring forward. And, just to head it off now, don't ask me about Immaculate Constellation. That name has been floating around in rumor mills and whistleblower circles lately, supposedly tied to some hyper-classified need-to-know program dealing with the most exotic tech or maybe even non-human intelligence. Think, the crown jewel of UFO secrecy, but I have got zero intel on it. Whether it is real or disinformation, I could not tell you. I am not an intel officer, I am an electrical engineer. That said, when you spend enough time in this field, especially brushing up against these kinds of programs, you start to pick up on intelligence tradecraft. You learn how to watch what people say, how they say it, and what they don't say. You adapt. You learn how to run with the wolves. Humanity has, believe it or not, already figured out anti-gravity, and not just in theory. Through a mix of breakthrough homegrown innovation and reverse engineering alien or non-human technology, we have reached a level of mastery that is far beyond what the public or even most classified programs know. And when I say mastery, I don't mean lab experiments. I mean we have built craft that can leave the solar system. That sounds insane, I know, but that is the reality, whether people are ready to hear it or not. Some of these achievements came purely from human brilliance. Think, black project engineers working in isolation and hitting gold. Others had a head start thanks to recovered UAP, that is, wreckage or intact craft not made by humans. The technology we are talking about here is more advanced than even what is hidden inside the most secretive parts of the US military-industrial complex, and that includes the crown jewel contractors, Booz Allen Hamilton, Honeywell, Lockheed Martin, Meta Corporation, Raytheon, Boeing. All of them are allegedly working on different variants of this anti-gravity technology under deep black budget programs. But here is the key nuance. There is a difference between just shielding yourself from gravity or generating a gravitational push, gravitational repulsion, and actually creating what is known as HFGWs, high-frequency gravitational waves. Gravitational shielding or repulsion might allow for silent hovering or sudden movement, like the Tic-Tac UFOs, but high-frequency gravitational waves, if generated and controlled, are a whole other level. They could, in theory, allow for warping space-time itself, enabling faster-than-light travel without breaking physics as we know it. If you are trying to trace the real roots of anti-gravity technology, you should be digging into the work of T. Townsend Brown. He was decades ahead of his time. His experiments focused on how electric fields might interact with gravity, something mainstream science largely ignored or dismissed. That is where a lot of the real trail begins. As for zero-point energy, the elusive background energy thought to exist even in a vacuum, it's not just some mystical idea. The trick, if you want to tap into it, involves manipulating something called the electromagnetic vector potential. That is a more abstract part of the EM field equations that normally gets brushed off as just math, but it might be the key to bending the rules. I won't go deeper into that here, but know that is where it starts. I worked on a private project, quietly run through a BAE Systems lab, that was focused on building a working gravity generator. We weren't using alien metals or billion-dollar defense budgets. We did it using advanced but obtainable components, Tesla turbines, which use spinning disks to move fluid or gas very efficiently, plasma toroid chambers, think donut-shaped energy fields with charged particles, microwaves, crystals, and high-speed rotating magnets. This setup, when tuned correctly, generated gravitational waves, what some call gravitons, the hypothetical particles that mediate gravity. And we are not talking microsignals here. We were producing many kilowatts of gravitational energy. The total build cost was under $3 million. That is not pocket change, but it's also not unobtainable if you are a serious lab. And more importantly, it worked multiple times consistently. One thing to understand, gravitational waves are not seen directly. You detect them electromagnetically because gravity itself is a result of space-time curvature, and those curvatures have real, measurable effects on electromagnetic fields. That is how you know it's happening. You're not just pushing air, you are bending the fabric of space itself, even if just a tiny little bit. Despite all the hype, you don't need so-called metamaterials. Those exotic alloys or alien composites everyone obsesses over, to build something that demonstrates real, measurable gravitational effects. You can create macroscopic, visible, large-scale proof-of-concept systems using entirely Earth-based, known materials. It's not about the material being alien, it's about how you use what is available. Simple as that. You will notice in some of the files I am showing that the Soviets coined a term called rotational gravitation and believed that rotating masses acted as emitters and receivers of generational waves. I am not going to argue with those in the comments that say this is not possible, and I am not going to argue with idiots that don't know how to think outside of the box. My question is this: if the Soviets thought it to be worthy of experimental investigation, then why is it not being done here? Oh wait, it is. It's just going to stay forever classified. Forever. Ask J. Stratton why he prevented multiple inventors from getting their own laboratory. Because many of the inventors he suppressed focused on rotating capacitors, something the Soviets pursued very quickly. I am sure his $1 million book deal helped smooth over all the people he royally fucked. My beef is that we are classifying basic science that our adversaries are now discussing in more open forums and in peer-reviewed literature. It is bullshit. All for what? So that Lockheed can make science breakthroughs proprietary and own it. The closest I have seen anyone in the public domain get close to describing how the technology works is Lieutenant Colonel Tom Burden and a few others. The tough part of all of this is taking the theory and applying it to a practical experiment. Not many can bridge that divide, but a small, genius chunk of engineers and some theoretical physicists have. You want to know who a real, high-level gatekeeper of this stuff is? Admiral John Michael Mike McConnell. He currently works at Booz Allen, or at least, that was the last I had heard of his whereabouts. I realize now that being given limited time on this planet makes you think about what really should matter. I want the next generation to have a chance. P.S. The tic-tac is ours, humans. I worked on certain aspects of it, personally. I am not sure what the final verdict is on the truth of this leak. I would like to at least throw this out here, however. I currently work in, and have for several years now, in government procurement and bidding for the corporation I work for. Simply put, I am in charge of keeping us compliant with GSA regulations so we can sell our products to the government, and I am also in charge of finding and pursuing government procurement bids and contracts. Based on how the system operated, the paperwork screenshots looked, and the wording, numbers, and the codes written in the manner that they were, as well as the format, it completely matches up to the GSA, Fed BizOps, and US government contract websites and catalogs looks and content-wise for that period in time. If this was just a LARP, the amount of detail they included regarding the aspect is incredible. Would not be easy to duplicate, because the format and websites updated and changed constantly, and some of what was mentioned no longer exists even, and frankly, was too accurate to be faked. Again, just my 2 cents in opinion. I am not saying it's true or false, just saying I have been doing that aspect for long enough to know that it looked exactly like it should have to be real. I am not in this line of work, but what grabbed my attention is all the personality callouts. Definitely sounds like an ex-employee who's been stewing over all this for years. Could obviously fake that based on watching videos and having a strong opinion, but it somehow feels more personal. I am an aerospace engineer recruiter. A couple years back, I was recruiting a senior mechanical engineer role. I was talking to a candidate, a mechanical engineer with 25 plus years of experience. According to him and his resume, he held top secret clearance for a good chunk of his career, specifically while at Northrop. Super nice guy, loved to talk, and came across as honest. At one point in the conversation, he said, "I probably should not be talking about this, but back to Northrop, I worked on a craft that could go from under the water to the air, space and back in the same flight." That always stuck with me, because that is mind-boggling technology. Seeing that exact technology mentioned on image number 2, with nearly the exact same wording, gave me chills. This post includes so many images and documents, I cannot possibly show them all, so I will be leaving a link in the description to the original post with the images, so you can view them all there on your own time, instead of me flashing them on the screen for a couple of seconds. You'll notice that the text in the one I am reading is modified to give more in-depth explanations as to what the guy is actually talking about, and to make it more accessible for viewers who maybe don't know as much. I have not changed anything he revealed, and I've only added context and explanation to the post. Sorry, I know this was less of a story and more of a guy yaps about a whole lot of nothing, but I thought maybe it could be interesting with details added and explained. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed the story so far. If you do and you want to hear more, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment down below, as it lets the algorithm know that you like my content and it promotes it to more people. My goal for the channel is to hit 50,000 subscribers, and we're closing in fast, so thank you, and back to the stories. This is a story that I was involved with, but happened to a girlfriend of mine. I was working one night, and when I got out, I found I had a text from her saying she was staying the night alone, was creeped out, and asking if I wanted to come and keep her company. Of course I did. It was maybe another hour before I got started, and she lived in a house with her uncle that was outside of town by maybe about 30 minutes away. As I pull up the street towards her drive, I almost get run off the road by a white truck. I get to the house to find it surrounded by police, many with guns drawn. I get stopped, but she is outside and convinces the police that she had called me and asked me to come over. It was then that I heard the full story of what happened. She had just gotten back from a run, and when she got home, she went straight in, locked up, and took a shower. After relaxing for a bit in the basement, where her bedroom was, she went upstairs to the kitchen. She walked past the front door and found the door unlocked. This was when she texted me, but she did not freak out yet. Another hour goes by, and she is in the basement when she hears glass break upstairs. She panics and runs to her bedroom, locking the door behind her, and hides under the bed. Not sure how long it has been, she is getting ready to crawl out and look around when she sees the door push in ever so slightly and the knob rattle. All the way back under the bed, she texts her mom that someone is in the house and please call the police. A few minutes go by and nothing happens. Just as she peeks out from under the bed, she notices that the door is pushed in, as if someone is leaning against it. At that point, she hears someone talking quietly in the hallway. At first, it sounds like two people, but then she realizes it is one man talking to himself. Arguing with himself, actually. It sounded like he was arguing to leave right away, at the same time as talking himself into staying and breaking down the door. Then he mumbles, "Police, yes, the police are here." He repeats this several times, getting louder and louder, until finally he starts to bang on the door. "Hello, we know you are in here. This is the police. Open the door." She does not respond, and after a few minutes, the man starts talking to himself again. She won't open the door. She shouldn't open the door. I am a nice person. I just want to talk. I will break down the door if she does not answer me. This kind of talk continued for a time. Sometimes him talking to himself, and sometimes talking to her. Suddenly, there is silence. A few more minutes go by, and then there is a frantic banging on the door, along with him screaming. I would not open the door if I were you." At almost that exact moment, she hears shouts coming from upstairs. It sounds like multiple voices, and they are yelling, "Police, is anyone here?" She does not move as she hears movement upstairs, then finally moving downstairs. At a soft knock on the door, she bursts into tears upon hearing multiple voices stating they are the police and is everything okay. It took her a while to get coaxed out from under the bed and to open the door, where she found 6 officers waiting. They took her upstairs. She told them her story. They said they arrived to find the front door wide open and had searched everywhere in the house but found no one. Notes were being taken, and several officers were getting ready to leave when the sound of breaking glass from downstairs caused everyone to jump, and most of the officers drew their guns and ran downstairs. They found a window to the backyard broken almost completely out. It was roughly at this point that I was driving up, and it took another hour before I had heard everything. Everyone was quite shaken up, almost in a stunned state of disbelief. No one had any idea who had been in the house or what they were trying to do. Upon inspection, they had found that glass near the front door had been broken out, then cleaned up so it was not immediately noticeable. I brought her back to my place that night, and it was not until the next morning that I was chilled to the bone, realizing that the truck I was almost run off the road by was most likely driven by whoever had been in the house. Nothing was ever found after that. This happened almost 8 years ago, and it still gives me chills thinking what could have happened. Now, reading this thread made me remember about something that happened to my family. This story took place in the early 80s, before I was born. Heard it from my cousin, who confessed it to me while telling me other stuff. Bear with me. I don't know what was encountered. I don't know if it was skinwalkers, a goat man, or something else. Anyway, here I go. My family used to own several acres of mountain in South Texas. Not Rocky Mountain kind of mountains, but a nice little size and area. No more than a couple 100 feet above land. Beautiful, lovely piece of property, worth a lot of money now, had the family not sold it years prior for no other reason other than just to get money. My father and uncles built a cabin on the property over several years during the 60s and 70s. Had rudimentary plumbing and electricity, as best as you could get being miles away from civilization. The family tried getting to there to vacation a couple times a year, but with the men all being truck drivers on the road for long hours, their schedules seldom synced up. They went when they went. The area was surrounded by some forest, had some critters and wildlife, but it had no spooky legends associated with it, and my family had visited the area on a regular basis. They didn't really encounter anyone outside of some campers who were usually at the bottom of the mountains, maybe a hunter or two. Most of their vacation was spent with the cousins, being children, playing and hanging out. The women, my aunts, gossiped and cooked, and the men, my uncles and usually a couple older male cousins, sat back and drank. Typical Mexican-American family, lol. One particular evening, that all changed. It was my oldest uncle, his son, who was an adult, our other cousins, and 2 of my aunts. They did what I described in my first part. The men were outside drinking, while the kids were inside with the women. Suddenly, they heard a woman scream. It surprised the hell out of my uncle and my cousin. They were genuinely concerned when they heard it again, that some camper or someone may have strayed too far from wherever it is they were coming from and got hurt trying to climb the rocky terrain on a moonless night. So, they take their flashlights and charge forward. When they go into the forest area, the scream stops. My uncle yells out, asking if someone needs help. The person did not respond. My cousin shined his light over an area, and when it passed, the screaming started again. Only this time, the scream was not far away. It was closer. To them, it sounded like a woman being assaulted and murdered. Their first idea was, let's go back to the cabin and go get our shotguns. When they started walking away, they heard a second scream accompany the first scream, except the scream was closer than the first and came at them from the side. They thought they saw someone move in the forest, too fast for their lights. So, They run back to the cabin, and by then there is a third and fourth individual scream coming about. The women and children are freaking out. They ask what it is, and they have no idea. They lock the doors, load their shotguns, and wait. The easiest thing they could do was haul ass in the car when it started, except it was moonless, and it was a tricky way driving down the mountains on a paveless road. This being the early 80s, there were no cell phones or GPS or anything of that sort available to a blue-collar family. They were just going to have to wait it out. My aunt starts praying. The kids are quiet. My uncle and cousin take watch on different sides. By the time 30 minutes passed, they heard something like 20 different screams, all bellowing at once in some demented symphony. They tried looking in the forest through the windows to catch a look of someone, but they could not see anyone. Well, they could not see anyone at the edge of the forest. With it being so close, they kept questioning where the hell it was coming from. They wondered this until they stopped looking at the actual forest area and looked up at the trees. That is when they saw it. Standing on the branches were people moving up and down, jumping from tree to tree. They blended in with the night, with the trees and leaves themselves. Little light reflections sometimes shined off their eyes, even when no light passed over them, and despite it being completely dark outside. My uncle got fed up with this. Despite being religious and afraid, he was not going to take this torment. He opened the door once, fired his shotgun in the air. The sound roared, and it momentarily silenced the screaming things dancing on the trees. He yelled at them, both in English and Spanish, for them to leave them the hell alone before closing the door and barring it. The sudden silence was a brief respite. The people and the trees vanished, but they were still there, and that is when they changed their tactics. They waited for about 15 minutes after they went silent before something happened again. They waited about 15 minutes in silence after the last scream faded. The quiet was heavy, not peaceful, but thick, like the air itself was holding its breath. My uncle and cousin stayed on opposite sides of the cabin, eyes glued to the windows, shotguns loaded and ready. The kids were too scared to sleep, the women whispering prayers under their breath, clutching rosaries that had not been touched in years. Then they started hearing footsteps, not on the ground, but on the roof. Slow, deliberate, crunching steps. The cabin was metal-roofed, and whatever was walking across it was not trying to be quiet anymore. It was heavy, but not animal-heavy. The pacing was too smooth. The steps circled around from one corner to another, pausing above the front door, then above the back window where my cousin was posted. He said the hair on his arm stood up, and not from fear, but from something else, like static, like the air had changed. Then came the knocking. 3 slow, loud knocks, not on the door, but on the walls. First near the front, then near the side, then the back. A slow rotation, as if something was testing the structure, or maybe just mocking them. They yelled out again, my uncle shouting in Spanish now, furious and desperate, warning them to go, calling on God, threatening to shoot again. No response, just more knocking, always in threes. That is when my aunt saw the shadow move across the small kitchen window. Not a person, taller, thin, unnaturally so. She said it did not walk like a person. It floated past, but left a shadow. My cousin swung his flashlight toward the window, but there was nothing, just glass and the trees beyond. Then came the scratching, not at the doors or windows, on the inside walls, soft, like nails, dragging against wood from inside the cabin. It moved slowly behind the paneling, like something was crawling between the insulation. That was the first time the family really panicked. The kids started crying, and my other aunt grabbed a kitchen knife, standing in front of the hallway to shield them. They never saw the things clearly again that night, but they heard them until nearly dawn. The scratching, the knocks, sometimes a tap 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 at the window, even though nothing was visible outside. And the worst part, they had stopped screaming. They were quiet now, listening maybe, waiting. As soon as the sun started to rise, and they had just enough light to see the edge of the road, my uncle told everyone to pack up fast. They threw whatever they could into the car, did not care about leaving supplies or food behind. just got in and drove. My uncle led the way with a shotgun across his lap the entire time. They did not stop until they were back on pavement, miles away. Later that week, my uncle and cousin returned with 2 other men during daylight. They went back to collect what was left and check for any signs, maybe campers messing around, or animals, or some kind of prank. They found the cabin just as they left it, but there were no footprints, not on the roof, not around the house, nothing but their own tracks in the dirt.